the go live button. And we're live. It is Monday, April 25th, a day that will live in Twitter infamy.
What do you mean Twitter infamy? Is it
in communication, internet law communications infamy.
No, in just infamy implicator. Basically, like I think this is our generation's. Where were you when JFK was shot? Like, where were you when you found out that that Twitter was bought by Elon Musk?
So we were supposed to have Harvey, who is a source and I dare say like a friend at this point. Del and I have known each other for years. She has been at Twitter for years as rose to the level of the head of trust and safety, or the VP of trust and safety, has been was at the company for 13 years. And I texted her this morning. I was like, oh my gosh, of course you should come on. And she was like, yes, I love just like talking about things. So let's do it. And then some things came up, which I'm not at liberty to talk about. But basically, she cannot come on right now today, but she will be coming on next week. And I have it promised. And so that will be happening next week. And it will be great because there are I wasn't even going to kind of point Del onto issues around Elon Musk and Twitter. I was going to kind of have her talk about what it means to run, like, kind of the hardship of trying to clean up a site and like trying to like make that, like, about the farcical notion between like anything goes free speech, completely deregulated free speech is the best way to protect free speech, and like the importance of a regulated and a well-regulated kind of forum to create the ultimate kind of free speech that we imagine. And no one understands that better than Del, who also, by the way, has worked in this industry for years before she was even at Twitter, and was like working to is famous for being the quote unquote bait child on To Catch a Predator. Which is kind of like one of her incredible kind of backstories, is that she was actually like both like in person and online the person who like was baiting like child sexual predators
She was the evil Selena.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, no, she was like she was like the evil Lolita. Like, she was she was like kind, like a Selena Lolita mashup. Like, I mean, it was yes, exactly. But like, but it was all. Anyways, all of that being said, we're not allowed to have fun anymore. We're definitely not allowed to have fun on Twitter. Elon Musk is going to make short shrift of that. But yeah, so Scott, we have a ton of questions, but like, I don't know, just like, what are your thoughts about everything?
Okay, so the first thing is that I don't think it's so. I'm not quite sure. I have certain senses, and which we could talk about, but I do find the whole hysteria about it somewhat amusing. So there's the real things, like the things you were just talking about, which are very serious issues having to do with trust, harassment regulation, all the kinds of things that the essential work that content moderation does when it's done correctly. Like, there's real worries about that. That's the real thing. But there's this also, just like we all hate the tech bros, and now the fact that he kind of like owns the site, that's one of the reasons why I deleted my Facebook account. I mean, I hated like being associated with Mark Zuckerberg. So there was but I mean, the joke is, of course, is that like everything is owned by very rich people, so and very rich, awful people too. And so, like, why are we getting so upset about this?
I mean, this is kind of a little bit what I said last week, which was like these fault lines have always been here. They're obviously here. Like they were been here, like we're just kind of inured to this idea that they could change hands, that we would have no control over them. And it kind of like illuminates the lack of control we have over these like private companies that we view as like kind of public because they control public rights, right? And so this is like a fascinating question. But like at the end of the day, like there's an old saying at, I mean, and this has been written about extensively, I'm not like illuminating this, but there was like I was telling a reporter today that well, there's the chance that this becomes like a Friends of Elon Musk site. Like he keeps it exactly as it is, but just like certain people, like he uses it to go after his enemies, and he like lets his friends do whatever the fuck they want. And like they're like, that's a fascinating idea, that's never happened before. I'm like, yes it has. Like that happens all the time.
Yeah. Have
like,
you ever heard of newspapers? I mean,
yeah, I know.
that's like the whole thing about Hearst and yellow journalism and all that stuff.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was thinking about like I was even thinking about like there's a term that has been written about extensively called FOSS, which is the Friends of Sheryl Sandberg, which was like the kind of like the certain types of people got their speech got a little bit more due process than other people, like to get their speech poked back up. And so like this kind of thing has happened for a while. And like, but yes, you're totally right about like the Hearst and everything else. Like, of course, and the gatekeeper kind of function of any type of publication. But I don't know. So yeah.
So it is something about the feature of networked communication which makes this particularly difficult. So like you don't want the state to own the means of production. You definitely don't want that. So what you want is that the means of production, the means of communication, be in private hands. Except that you assume that there's going to be lots of media, so there'll be a number of newspapers, a number of TV stations, radio stations, and they'll all. But like when you have network communication, like we have with social media, there's really only one, and so that has to be in private hands, and that's obviously quite problematic.
Yeah, I mean, this has always been kind of, and I know it sounds I think that it sounds like a little confusing to people, but it's like actually government here, state hands, is not a proxy for like putting it into the hands of individual people. Like it's like confusingly is like there's three, and this is like kind of Jack Baldwin's triangle thing, which is like there's these platform corporations, there's users, citizens, and then there's the government, states. And like, yeah, people think that states and governments are this proxy, but in fact, we have this long history, obviously, of trying to keep that type of power away from like states and governments. But like, one of the things that I don't know, honestly, is like how one of the things that I'm fascinated by, and I'm curious of your thoughts about this, is like, he said that he's going to do all of these types of things, like he's just going to run only like if it's legal, he can just have speech on Twitter. Like we'll just have legal speech on Twitter, like as if that is kind of this clear delineated line that is not going to have to be constantly like adjudicated by people at Twitter, which is why as long as they are adjudicating that line of other people's laws, they might as well adjudicate their own lines as well within those laws, which is what they do, right? And like kind of like do all of this kind of stuff. And so just like how does he think that that's going to make this like how like I really do wonder, like if you and I've always wondered this, like when conservatives, Republicans say like let's just make it a First Amendment protected site.
Right.
You'd have pornography, hate speech, crush videos, like spam. Like those are all protected by the Fourth Amendment explicitly. And so like, what would you do? Like the site would be unfunctional. Like, so how is this going to work from a business perspective?
Yeah, I don't know. I would just say I just checked. I in the last 3 hours I've lost 100 followers.
Do you think it's his
It's,
fault?
I think I mean I generally never lose followers, and I just looked. I lost 100 followers in the last couple hours. People leaving now. People leave and then they come back. The problem is that he's taking it private, and so he won't have to report numbers. You won't know what revenue's like. You won't know what the user base is like. It's going to be a private company, and so he can run it as his own little, you know, shit posting, site, and it can hemorrhage tons of people, and like so he has like $20 billion less. I mean,
But didn't
like it does.
Morgan Stanley like put up $24 billion for this? So they're part. I mean, so yes, it's owned by Musk, but like Morgan Stanley is not going to want to watch 24. Like, where is Morgan Stanley going to get their $24 billion back if it's being
Well,
taken private? I don't actually like kind of totally like I'm like not as adept at the biz orgs kind of side of this as I probably should be. Um,
well, I don't know. I didn't read the thing, and nor am I adept at it too. It's just that it depends on what position they have, what kind of stock they have. They may feel like no matter what he does, at least there's going to be $24 billion left in the company by the time he gets done with it. I mean, you don't know like what his like how what the distribution of ownership versus voting, and I mean, I don't know at least. Let me ask you a question. Do you think I mean, he talks along a big game. Do you think he is actually going to implement a lot of these things, or he's just talking?
I don't know. Like, I mean, I think that, like, I mean, I like this is one of the things that I think is the most kind of crazy about. Sorry, Nina's coughing. But one of the things that is the most crazy just about like Musk generally is that he's completely so mercurial and so without kind of like that as many times as he's trolling, he then ends up being serious. So like, I'm not going to like name names, but Siba on Twitter gave me such a hard time last week. He was just like, "No, you idiots! He's trolling. He doesn't have this money. He can't make this offer." And I'm like, "Uh huh." Like, and now here we are. And so like, I it was like even Siva, if even if like this doesn't end up coming through with in this offer with Elon, the fact that one person could raise $40 billion is not insane anymore, unfortunately. And like there's just kind of like the fact that this is Twitter is one of like the largest speech platforms, but there just aren't there's only like kind of like two really mega three maybe mega large platforms, which are like Facebook, Google, YouTube, and TikTok. And those are like the main players right now. And now we have Twitter, which is like, or like we've always had Twitter, which is in the hundreds of millions of users, not the billions of users. And I don't know. I think to your point about kind of like, I think a lot of people have gone to work at the company in the last 13 years. And I know it's like kind of crazy to think about this, but if you even go back to 2015 when I started doing my research on Twitter specifically, like they were, I mean, like Sarah Jung wrote her famous like the Internet of Garbage or like what and like I remember like the main comparison that people kept making Twitter to was like a clown car that fell down a gold mine. Like it was just like this completely like ass hattery garbage site that was just full of harassment, Gamergate. There was just like women hated it. It was just like known for being complete crap. And then the orange hair man came and everyone started to care about it and became the place to shit on the orange man and then like the place to do whatever else. Although it also became the place where the orange man shit on us. So who's the joke on? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
But
really.
like but it really, and like a lot of people during that time worked at the company really, 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 really hard to make it a better place. And like, I don't know, it's very depressing to care about what you're working on. People make fun of like tech people, but like people care about their jobs. Like they decide not to go into government because they want to have an impact, like by going into tech, and they really care. And so I don't know. Anyways, all of this is just to say that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that like, so I have read a bunch of profiles of Elon Musk over the years because he's kind of an interesting guy. He does seem, um, I wouldn't describe him as a rock. He doesn't seem like that stable a guy. And like,
And Iraq is a very unstable country, so I wouldn't really like it. Sorry.
No, that was totally fair. But the thing is that the idea that you come in and that it, like everything he says, you think like, okay, now just stop for a second and think about, just think the next thought. So like that whole thing about anyone who pays for Twitter Blue for $3 a month should get a verified thing. Well, like how are we doing that exactly?
Well, like, I mean, like all of his proposals, like a person who will go unnamed just said to me a couple of minutes ago that was basically like, what, like he wants to have just people use their real names and that will solve everything. And like real names, like what is it, fucking 2002 again? Like why is this like, even or why are we even like, who are you, like Senator Blumenthal? Like what are you doing? Like why do you think that this is an answer to this problem? This is a joke. Like this is a joke. Like right.
So let me ask you, when you speak to people who are obviously in the business, do they think it's obviously a big deal, but do they think it's a wholly negative thing, or do they think that it's being blown out of proportion? Only, the guy's got several different big companies. He's not going to be spending time micromanaging things. I mean, what's the word?
I mean, yeah, the word is interesting. So the word in trust and safety is deep, deep depression. And also, hello, Twitter, we're hiring. Like literally, that is like to a person in trust and safety that I've contacted today is like, if people are willing to get like, make sure to send people like that we know that we're like hiring in these nonprofit industries and we're trying to get, and so like, great, that's not actually the best solution to this. People at Twitter seem universally apoplectic from people that I've talked to, and I've talked to like maybe 3 or 4, 5 in like trust and safety. And then I don't know, trust and safety people generally, I don't know. I think that they think that this is like a moment for people understanding potentially how big it is, but it's going to be painful. And then the other part that I'll just say is that there's people in tech, which is different, which is like obviously a massive industry. It's like being like people in law. Like, what do people in law think about this? But like, And like, I don't know. You have like your tech. You have people who genuinely think like, well, he has like 2 kind of incredible, innovative and groundbreaking companies. Like, why? How bad could this be? And I just don't think that is particularly coherent or like convincing. I think that Tesla has done a lot of great things, and like SpaceX might be doing great things, or might be a giant waste of money. Who the fuck cares? But like, generally speaking, I think you can't like pop out like I'm really great at making widgets and then I'm really good at making feathers. No, birds are good at making feathers. You're terrible at making feathers. Like you can make widgets because like that is a thing that people can do. Like,
yeah. So now, I mean, what you raise, of course, the critical issue, and now this connects with something that I wasn't very clear about when I said it before. That when it comes to communication, especially content moderation, consistency is important because it really contributes to legitimacy and the ability of people to accept decisions that are made, which constrains them. And so a guy like that, he is kind of unstable, at least personality wise. He's unscrupulous. I mean, he's played. I mean, he used Twitter to like to juice the the share
Didn't he get
price of
fined for
Tesla.
the SEC?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, so that the guy is going to be involved in content moderation decisions and policies that require like a real degree of principled consistency to the extent that one can in these situations. He seems like really very poorly
But
situated.
But to that point too, like consistency, like anyone would, in my property and any type of law, like 1L law class, you kind of give the rationales for coming down a law. Like there's administrability, there's efficiency, there's consistency, there's fairness, there's like, and they're interrelated, and marketability, economics, like whatever. But like consistency is actually something that backs up both, like it backs up marketability, like too, like having like an ability to know where the law is going to land, an ability to know where things are going to be, what your investment is going to prove out on, is like a huge part about marketability and efficiency. And so like that is actually kind of this very interesting thing. It's like he's failing at both, like potentially failing at both like the justiciability and like fairness questions, obviously from an individual standpoint, for democracy's sake, but he's also failing at like this kind of very law and economics efficiency kind of argument, which is that he's just like a crazy pants person. So like what do you know is going to happen next? I really mean this very consistently. Like Matt Levine, who is one of my favorite writers on Bloomberg and writes this incredible newsletter, has been writing this, like, I swear to God, it's a master class in corporations law final exams, like class, like newsletter after newsletter for the last couple of days, all about Twitter. And I kind of like read these and I'm just like, and he's literally like, we have no idea what he's going to do, because sometimes he's trolling and sometimes he's serious, and sometimes he's trolling and sometimes he's serious. And like, that is terrible for markets. Like that is terrible for the law and terrible for markets. Like,
right. That is really, that is absolutely right. I mean, the ability to predict your future is critical to sustaining value and also to like living a good life.
So one of the things, I have a question for you. What do you think you will do? So one of the things I've seen come across in my emergency newsletters today that have been deploying on all my tech newsletters, what are you, one of the things I've heard a lot of is like, this will be the moment where Twitter gets cloned. And like that it's not just for like a very right wing kind of like Parler or Gab or Truth Social type of thing, but like someone will clone Twitter and there will be a bunch of new companies. Would you go to a new Twitter?
Well, it all depends on like what Twitter becomes. Like, I don't really intend to stay like in a neo-Nazi site. I mean, or like the thing is will it be not fun anymore because like you're interacting with assholes all the time? I mean, I think that's just really the question. The thing about like you can always sign up to a new platform and just copy and paste. I mean
Right?
yeah. But ultimately it's the experience that matters. So like Facebook, I couldn't stand looking at that page. I couldn't everything about Facebook. I hated who owned it. I hated how it looked. I hated
it got worse
format.
and worse and worse over time.
Yeah,
It really did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and so it really depends. I don't think this is good, but can I throw an idea, like a hot take at you, which is that like part of me is actually interested in to see what is going to happen. Well, of
I
course
actually feel like a little bit of a sociopath, because I'm like, people are like, how do you feel about this? And I have like friends calling me and like they're in tears and like things are really like, it's a bad day for them because this is like their livelihood and like what they care about and have worked at for a living. And like, hey Genevieve, sorry, we're gonna minimize you. I heard a Luke. but but the but generally, like, I think that one of the main things, I'm like, this is fascinating. Like, that's been like more or less like, I'm like, this is gonna be fascinating. Like,
No, it's actually not even fair for you, because this is
I
like
know.
they announced that somebody's changing the rule of recognition, and I'm like, oh my god, let me see how this works.
No, right?
Right.
Like,
But from your perspective, it's like brilliant, because like you get to see how people will react under changed conditions of content moderation policy.
totally. And there's a couple of really interesting things. One is that, like, we've had all of these moments recently about kind of this dominance of platforms. And so, like, how dominant is a platform if it can
Yeah,
just get,
right.
yeah, right? And then, like, two, and then, like, this is coinciding with Netflix, which is like having this ebb, which is just kind of like, not to be a total economics, kind of like, not that I lean this way necessarily, but like, kind of, if you just, it's been a short window in which we have assessed this dominance of these platforms, and like, this seems, all of these things seem to be cutting in like this way of like, well, maybe these just naturally evolve out of dominance like after a period of time. And then like, and like, I'm not going to say that that's necessarily true for all of them, and like, it might not be true, especially with Amazon and some, and Google and some of the others, but like, I do think that, so that's interesting. But then the other thing is like, what's sociologically interesting is what this makes people realize, and then what norms this ends up creating about what we expect about these platforms, which was already like, after last year, after January 6th, like, there's this crazy like sea change in how people finally understood the power of these platforms. Like, holy crap, they can take down the president of the United States from these platforms and ban him. Like, and it was just kind of, there was no missing that. No one could skip it. Like, it was just like, everyone had to see that and understand this happened. And now, and that was all kind of coming from a place of like, well, Jack Dorsey has run Twitter forever, and Mark Zuckerberg has run Facebook forever. And now it's like, well, they're all private companies. They can just be bought and sold. Like, it
Yeah,
just kind of,
yeah. That is
so
that is such a that like, as usual, you say such fascinating, interesting things, and I think this is a perfect example of it. It's like, we like, what happens after the framers die and we get a new
that's
generation,
exactly,
right?
well, no,
Like,
well, Mark
yeah,
Zuckerberg is literally, like, I've compared him to this, and I don't really think people totally grok what I meant by this. Maybe now they'll kind of get it, but like, that he is this benevolent dictator that is seeking to devolve his power in this exact realm to kind of this like semi like accountable oversight board, right? Twitter has never done that. No other platforms have had the type of, and Google has explicitly been like, in conversations that I've had with them, and been like, we're just don't have the public pressure to have to do this yet. But like, this type of moment where like a crazy mercurial billionaire can buy up an entire speech platform that 300, 400 million people use is like, well, maybe we should actually start building democracy into these platforms in some type of
right,
meaningful way.
right. This is like, there is a weird way in which I feel like I was bought today. Like, there's in the sense that, like,
You'll get a check in the mail for like 73 cents.
no, but I don't mean like, I just mean like, I didn't have any say. Who owns it? Now, true, I didn't build the website. I don't pay the bills for the servers. I mean, it's cost billions of dollars to run the whole infrastructure. But it did feel like, wait, you're allowed to do this? But of course, the joke, of course, is that that's true of everything. Like, I rent this
Well, like,
apartment.
imagine if they want, like, you buy like Friendlies and turn it into a vegan restaurant. Like, I mean,
Right.
right?
Right, or I mean, the thing is, I was saying I rent this apartment, but like, they could sell the building and then
Yes,
and then
exactly. And
kick
then,
me out. I mean, there is a, but there's a, I'm fortunately, um, lucky that I'm not subject to, um, kind of the economic vicissitudes of like somebody buying or selling this building that I live in, because I can go, thank goodness, to another building or something else like that. but like there really isn't. I mean, I would just have to give up this set of relationships, which would really be unfun.
Well, I will actually, I was gonna to this point, and I'm interested in kind of Genevieve's thought on this too. Like, what is I recently have been like kind of toy I mean, not recently, but like I've been especially toying with this idea of consumers as creators, and like maybe kind of coming up with this idea of speakers as one type of like speaker consumer on, so which is to say that like people who make their livelihood, and it's not just like you don't like you have like you don't make money off your Twitter account. Maybe you do a little, I have no idea, but like you don't monetize it. But like plenty of people do on YouTube with as many followers as you have on Twitter or other types of places, or TikTok, or like types of things like this. And like if this was banned, if Elon Musk had bought YouTube, like people would be like going fucking bonkers. Like this would, I mean, like
Right.
people's lives would be like, and like this is, so at a certain at what point do you as like an individual content creator have a stake that is a little bit outsized from like the average lurker or consumer, and in the fact that you kind of have, that we have like tens of thousands of people who follow us, and like that's not nothing. There was like this Lockean labor of love that we like
Right.
shit posted ourselves into. Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, this is Locke famously talked about mixing shit with value. It's the Lockean theory of property, which we all
yeah,
know and love,
it's
right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He said you were allowed to make as many hot takes as long as that there was as much and as good enough
I
takes
was
for everyone else.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
you
so
need some shit in the dirt to grow beautiful crops, Scott.
that's Do you know? I mean, I was speaking of that. Speaking of
Yeah.
that, we have like in about 10 days we're going morelling.
Are we? Oh God. Oh, good. I mean, that's
Speak,
great.
speaking of rooting around in the dirt.
I'm just hoping it rains again and
Yeah,
our
well,
Zip car shuts down again.
yeah, yeah.
Genevieve, hello, my
Hello.
friend.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
If there's an echo, I'm sorry.
No,
So
you're
two
good.
things. I think that it's going to be interesting to see a creator as a stakeholder starts to accrue a property interest because of the enrichment. I think that would be interesting because without the specific creators, do you even have the users to come to the platform like as an attraction? So I thought that might be something interesting because when we talked about it in property, we were encouraged to enrich the property to add the value. You know what I'm saying. I'm not saying it eloquently.
Yeah.
But then I have a quick question and then I do have to go because my tiny
of course.
co-pilot over here is ready.
We can hear him.
Yeah.
I know.
He's got his little keys. So my very hard-hitting question is, do you think the Twitter logo, the bird, is going to be replaced by a Martian?
Oh. What? Ooh, that seems like a good poll question.
Oh, that's a poll. That is definitely a poll question. Yeah. By the way, do we know when the deal is supposed to close?
I don't know. I don't think it's official yet. But I mean, like, the fact that the board approved it and they made a public announcement is about as. I mean,
No. I was just wondering when things.
Oh,
would
like
change.
what? Oh, when things will change? Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm putting up the poll question, but answer it. Do you think it's going to be a Martian?
I think it'll stay a bird. I do think that like this was a terrible decision for Elon Musk because
Why?
Well, because now he's not. See, the thing about shit posting is that it's you get to state a view without any of the consequences of holding that view. And once like it's not just a tweet, but it's a policy that that people like start adding you. Hey, Elon Musk, why did my my tweet only get 4 retweets? It's so funny. Or like why are you letting these transphobes on here? Why are you letting these neo-Nazis on here? Why are you letting, it's just like he'll be the man rather than the shit poster. And like, he'll just, like, everyone will then justifiably hate him, as opposed to what we do now, which is somewhat unjustifiably. I mean, it's kind of fun to hate Elon Musk because he's kind of an asshole, but we don't really have a good reason, because like, it doesn't really affect our lives. I mean, I don't work for Tesla. I don't work for SpaceX. He just says stupid things, I think, on Twitter. I don't think his tweets are funny. But I think he'll be a person of responsibility, and that's not fun. And then therefore, it's like, if you hate Elon Musk on Twitter, you're going to hate him on Tesla too.
I mean, I don't think that's like. I mean, wait, don't we already hate him on Tesla? I don't know.
Yeah, we do.
No,
we do.
Sorry, somebody says somebody's piping in. But,
well, I think Tesla is like, people are not quite sure because it's electric cars. That's cool, and they're beautiful, and they are extremely well engineered, as I understand. But on the other hand, he's Elon Musk. So
yeah, I think that's right. So we have a bunch of questions, so I'm trying to kind of get through them. And Eve, the floor is yours. Hold on, let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Because I'm using
Yes,
headphones.
you're
Okay, awesome. I feel like operators are standing by. Anyway.
Your Nepalese flags, by the way, like, look as if, like, just because you were grainy for a second, I thought you were like the windows of a spaceship, and you were, like, actually like,
yes. I'm in space now. Yeah, I've seen about a website called Counter Social on Twitter.
Truth Social?
Which is, no, not Truth Social.
Oh, Counter Social.
Counter Social, yes.
Okay.
And it's one of those things that's come up as an alternative to Twitter, and even when Elon was just discussing, when that was just in the ether about whether he would or would not buy it. So I just wondered if anybody had heard about it, or what other alternatives might be out there if Twitter does go down the tubes, or becomes unusable, or if it's better to stay at Twitter and fight to keep it usable. It's kind of like that same issue when somebody terrible gets elected into office and everybody says, half the people say, I can't stand it anymore, I'm moving out. And the other half people say, no, we have to stay here and make it better. So I just wanted to know how people felt about that.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. I like that a lot. What do you think, Scott?
Well, I don't know. Are you on Instagram?
I was for a long time, and again, I quit all Facebook products when I embedded there. But
I see.
I didn't quit them. I just abandoned them.
Are you part of any other platform? Like, do you do Pinterest? Do you do?
I don't do Pinterest. In fact, Pinterest remains to this day the thing that drives me the most crazy, because like, I just want a link to something and it just gives me a link to Pinterest, and I'm just like, I don't want this link to Pinterest. I want to be able to go buy this thing, right, or find a recipe for this thing. Anyway, what
about Letterboxd?
No, I've never even heard of Letterboxd.
Oh, yeah, Mike. So that's where you write reviews of films. I mean, there are lots of.
I did have an Etsy account as JH. Oh. He's joking. He thinks that like but I used to have an Etsy seller account when I was clerking. I had an Etsy seller account where I anyways, whatever. And then there are other things that I'm like, I would say that I have coalesced into one time syncing thing, which is mostly just Twitter. And that is mostly because it became, there's a bunch of reasons I've thought about it a lot because this is my job. But one of the reasons is that the layers of privacy are very clear. I'm publicly posting all the time. And I just know that and have to keep that in mind when I post, which is different than Facebook, in which I had instituted all of these weird triages of privacy of my friends from high school, my friends from college, but some of my friends from college that I like, and then some of the ones that I don't really care about anymore. And whatever the fuck. And people I worked with that I thought I was really close to and then never spoke to again after I stopped working with them. Like, whatever. I don't know. I think that actually, so Twitter for that reason was great for me. And like, I think it's
Great.
become much better in the last 6 or 7 years.
So, one of the people I follow, she pointed out, Alice from Queens, she pointed out that what's unique about Twitter is that it's text-based. And that's, I mean, if you think about it, right, that's like really unusual.
Yes.
And for people like us who are very text oriented, there's
Text and
really
link oriented.
text and link oriented, exactly right. It's really irreplaceable, I kind of think.
No, and I've said this in like a few papers. I think it's underexplored actually, which is that like YouTube is video, like it is just video, and like Evelyn Dueck speaks about this a lot about the special content moderation rules that apply to YouTube and how they're so, like it's not like a huge surprise. Like it is very hard to moderate hours and hours and hours of video. Like it is actually like requires watching and listening, and like you can, and like, you know, and text-based searches are very easy. And so like this is why, you know, and so like, but like the fact that there are photos on Twitter, and Twitter can, like, they're secondary to the nature of Twitter, means that Twitter can make them fuzzed out. Whereas like you couldn't, like, as like a default, right? You could like make an interstitial for, which is what the term is for fuzzing them out, like an interstitial to click through on every picture that got posted to Twitter, and it wouldn't be so onerous. Like most people would click on them and like whatever. Whereas like you can't do that for Instagram. The
Right,
only
that's
thing for
what it
Instagram
is.
is the picture. Yeah, exactly. And so that, no, and that's exactly right. And the AI for picture recognition, never mind video recognition or voice to text recognition, is still so far behind. I mean, like, yeah, that like people don't have a sense of this. But yeah, no, the nature of these different platforms means that you can do the content moderation in like much like, and it also changes the expectations of users. People don't come on Twitter expecting to see just TikTok videos. What they expect to see is text and then occasionally a good TikTok video they click out to. And like that,
right.
you know, and so that changes like what they're upset about if something comes down.
Right. So that's the thing. That's so since I think that's exactly right. So there's no real substitute right now for what it is. I also think that I wouldn't want something more niche like an academic, God forbid, an academia platform or you know, coastal platform. It's kind of fun that Twitter is a bit like you don't know what you're going to get at any single time. And that's kind of fun. And that you really only get from scale. So I don't know. I mean, unless being on there is kind of immoral and or unfun, I don't see anywhere else to go.
I will say this, that like it sucked for a long time. It was not as
Oh,
fun
really?
as yeah, oh yeah. Like
I joined in 2016.
I was on it since 2007, 2008,
really?
2008.
Okay.
Yeah, like whenever it started, like I think it was 2000. Yeah, anyways, I just, but like it was back in the days when you could, like, I didn't have a smartphone. Like, so this is like, and I like, you could literally use it by texting to a Twitter number, and you would post by texting on a numeric keypad your fucking text out. And like, I didn't have a data plan because I was a poor journalist. And like, I remember Josh Marshall being like, "Why haven't you looked at your Twitter account?" And I'm like, "Because you don't pay me enough to have a data plan." Anyways, Richard Wattenberger, the floor is yours. Hi, friend.
Hey. Hello. So I'm curious, since you've thought about this. I'm assuming you've thought about this a lot, but what are some of the judicial and legislative scenarios that you you fear if Musk turns Twitter into a violent, wild, wild west of free speech?
That's a great question, Kate. I mean, what what
Nothing.
are the, I'm sorry, what?
Nothing. I mean, like, not in the U.S. anyways. Like, there's like a lot that can stay up on that site that is completely protected by the First Amendment, Richard. Like, you can just like, and I will also be clear, there's like rampant pornography all over Twitter. Like, it exists, like, and like, or what you would call pornography, like by many, many standards. Like, there are pictures of naked breasts, and this is something that Twitter has often been like, there is like one of, and that has changed since Assess to FOSTA possibly, and like some other types of changes to 230. But generally speaking, like, the reason you don't see that in your feed is based on the people that you follow, and like, or like maybe you do see it in your feed. No judgment. But
I mean, so the thing is, the kind of crazy proposals for social media, I often associate with the right, so that like, let's repeal Section 230 because social media is being too restrictive. Now, you're right, as you just mentioned, SESTA and FOSTA, these are kind of clawing back on immunity for platforms that don't do enough for child sexual abuse material. What kind of crazy proposals can we expect from the left now?
Oh, I mean, I kind of, don't you think that the left is going to do a little bit what the right has done, which is just I think that they're going to try to clone. I think they're just going to try to clone things, create their. Oh, what do you think?
No, I thought that they were going to try to do is like introduce legislation, like something like some kind of
to get rid of 230 protection for all.
Yeah, like if you don't deal with COVID misinformation or things that pose serious public health risks. I mean, what are the crazy things that the left's going to come down with? I think the fear is too much. So something that never made sense about the Section 230 proposals from the right was that, like, you getting removed from Twitter is not going to be something that Section 230 speaks to at all. It's going to be something that speaks to a First Amendment protection, like, if anything. And then you're going to lose because they just have the right to get rid of you. You're just viewpoint discrimination. Like, there's just nothing. Like, it's just not even And then, like, but from the left, there's actually a much greater kind of a much greater kind of push now for Section 230. If they leave everything up, then you have much greater kind of like, this caused me all this harm, and the only way for me to get justice or be made whole on this harm that Twitter exacerbated is by being able to sue them for damages. And if you decide to do that, then like a Section 230 reform makes a lot of sense, because then you actually do want to try to push for kind of to use, if like in the absence of anything else, like you're going to try to move speech norms in a way that coincides with like generally recognize best practices in trust and safety. It's kind of like if Elon Musk bought a car company and decided not to put seatbelts in it and was like, hey, I'm just going to like decide not to put seatbelts in it, and there were no laws about seatbelts. You would allow people to sue him that got killed in car crashes until we decided to kind of, until it made so much sense through tort liability that we'd proven the fact that like seatbelts are best practices and you should put them in every car, and then we should make a law, and there wasn't a First Amendment banning that. So sorry for this mixed metaphor, but no. I totally understand the point. So, like, the thing is that Section 230 made no sense to be reformed from the right, but it's going to make a hell of a lot of sense to do when the claim is that by not engaging in content moderation, you're actually harming individuals, as opposed to by throwing somebody off the platform. They didn't get to say what they wanted to say.
100%. Like that's exactly right. And that is something that like I've kind of like, yeah. Anyways, I mean, in that case, I guess that like I have been kind of like apathetic towards Section 230 reform, but I would like support it in that case if like there's nothing else to push these companies towards that type of like thing. Then I'd be like fine with it, you know?
It's
Like
going to be there's going to be a lot of flipping positions going forward.
yeah, it's going to be completely crazy. It's almost like
Yeah.
everyone's just been making like shooting from the hip. So
Yeah. Or where you sit is where you stand, or something, or where you stand.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hi, Lisa. Nice
Hey,
to
how are
see
you folks?
Good.
Hey.
So, so my question is, at the beginning of the Trump administration, a lot of people were saying this place is a shit show. Let's move to Mastodon. And I sort of found Mastodon to be boring because it was siloed. It was like one of them was about anime and one of them was about furries and another one was about furries and the other one was about anime. And there was nothing there like that. What I love is what Scott was talking about with Twitter, that 1 minute I'm looking at something about furries and the next minute I'm looking about, I'm not one, but you know what I mean? Like something about bird watching, and then there's a bunch of insect photos, and then
common interest groups. It's
yeah, it's always surprising because there's all this extra stuff going on. But I wondered whether anybody had an opinion about Mastodon, if people started moving there en masse, whether it might get better. Is there any reason to pay attention to it?
I honestly, can I say that I never heard of Mastodon before you just said that. So
oh really?
Yeah, I never heard of it.
Yeah, so. Mastodon is like an open. So I honestly, Lisa, I think it's a great question. You know what? I actually think that Mastodon is slightly too fringe and sophisticated to kind of bring in at this exact moment. But I will say this. We should have Alan Rosenstein come back on. He is working on, he's brilliant, and he is working on a paper about the federalism of platforms and kind of the idea that Mastodon or some type of open source social network should be something that is like exists above all of these other types of kind of private platforms. Anyways, it's like a very interesting thing to say, but to your point about the usability about it, I don't think that that's controversial. It's not widely accepted, and this is one of the main problems with any type of kind of open source, open network type of social media structure, or any of them, is like besides TikTok, which is very much not built on the graph, which is super interesting, and we should spend some time on that at some point, but like all of these are built on some type of networking graph, and who you look at and who you talk to and who you follow and who you don't, and those change what you're served up. And so like deciding how to structure that, whether or not you want to subject yourself to that, or whether you just want to be like, almost, it reminds me of like I don't know, like the kind of the Wall-E, like in all of like the fat people in a Bark Laundry drinking their jumbo like sodas and like eating fries, like, and watching stream TV, like that reminds me of TikTok right now. It's just like pure, like everything you want to see, nothing that makes you feel bad, nothing that makes you think, nothing like, type of thing. And I just think that that's a different commodity, and maybe should be than like kind of the network stuff we're talking about.
But by the way, I just lost another 100 followers. I mean, it's like shit. It's
oh my God!
It's just hemorrhaging.
Targeting you?
I'm sorry.
I mean, you don't need Section 230 to get repealed, Scott, to just sue Elon Musk. Like,
no, I but I mean, it's weird. I mean, I just keep on just shedding them. It just keeps. I mean,
I have so many bots following me, Scott, like so many. This is something that's also going to be interesting, is like, something happened a couple of months ago in my Twitter follows, like in my notifications, which was just constant Bitcoin and and crypto. Like, I'm like, every day I wake up and it's like I'm tagged in 15,000 things that are like Bitcoin related, or I'm just like,
thank God that doesn't happen to me. But
oh really? I try to block all. I mean, wow. No.
Yeah, no, right.
I mean, you have real followers. I just have.
Yeah, I've been really spared. I don't get trolls. I don't get Bitcoin things, but I
That's
do
because you're
get
too
the
busy trolling everyone else, Scott.
I do get the catfishing thing, but God knows if I'll have an account by tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, since this has never happened to me ever, it just would suggest to me that like there's just
Wait, are you actually losing followers? I thought this was a bit. You're actually losing
no,
followers?
I'm not joking. I was at 74.6 at the beginning of the show, and now I'm at 74.4.
Huh. That's interesting. Let me look at. I don't know. Oh yeah, I've lost about 70 in today. Yeah, I just think that like maybe people are finally cracking down before they quit Twitter en masse or something. Anyways, Dr. Doom, you have the last question, sir.
Hi, thanks so much. Kate, you commented on your feed when the floating of the. Hey, sweetie, I'm on the phone. Sorry about that. You commented on your feed when the idea of an edit button was floated, that somebody was asking for a time machine. This is such a bad idea, in my opinion. I mean, so bad that it shows an incredible lack of thought on Musk's part.
What a shocker!
No. I mean, it's so dumb, and I was wondering if you could talk about what you thought the implications of ideas like this put in the. Thanks.
Sure. I actually thank you for that opportunity. But okay, so the reason the edit button is bad is because, of course, like, what if it was just like if it's a blog post, right? And like you put it up and it was something that like you then went back and edited it and whatever, that would be one thing. But like, and you kind of like even then, like you should probably have some standards in which you say like we edited this and whatever, because it enters public discourse and people start commenting on it. And then like the change of like the meaningfulness of likes, of retweets, of quote tweets, of responses changes if you change the edit function. So like you could say, I hate Elon Musk, and then you say, I don't hate Elon Musk. And like, how are you supposed to like, and then there have been 350 million people who have said they also hate Elon Musk, and they think that they've said I hate Elon Musk, but then you put the edit button in and now they don't hate Elon Musk. And look at all those people think that they look like idiots. So anyways, my point is that basically like the idea of an edit button from a content moderation standard is just an untenable position. You'd have to start from scratch for every tweet. It like, I don't know, like I haven't written about it mostly because I just didn't care enough. But like I spent the money on the Twitter Blue thing, which said that you would be able to edit. It's a fucking lie. They didn't let you edit. They gave you a 15-second timer to read it over and like make sure you didn't make a mistake, which to their credit actually made a little bit of difference.
I would just say I'm a big believer in the getting to read it over.
But I didn't need to spend $2 once I like kind of just like I was like, okay, get it. Take another second and think about it, like type of thing. But like there is you know, I don't know, like I just kind of I just think that this is so the real thing is that like no part of discourse, but especially not a discourse that is in any way kind of archivable, like something like you've posted or done something and we believe in this idea that the truth matters, and you post something when you post it, like what you posted matters, and like changing it matters, like, and changing your mind matters, like that those things like count. And so having an edit button would just kind of mean that like you could just kind of change the ground out from everyone around you all the time, and like it would just be a giant.
I couldn't agree more. The whole fun of Twitter is dunking on somebody who made a mistake.
I mean, I literally had also like I'll never the Hertz letter, Scott, the one that was like 5 pages long, and I typed out on Word, and then I screenshotted, and it was full of like typos. I put it up, and then like within like 10 minutes, it was already at like 100 retweets, and I was like, "Fuck!" It has like 8 million typos in it, and I was like, "Too late." I just was like, it was just kind of like, oh wow, I guess this is just gonna make it more credible. Like,
yeah, right. No, right, exactly. It's you're real. You can't
Yeah.
can't get around that. But we're gonna. I mean, Elon's gonna figure out how to do it through a series of tunnels. I hate the fact that we're actually going to be talking about him, and we're going to be saying things like Elon. Did you hear what Elon said? We're going to be using his first name as if he's like a friend, or we feel.
No, I do
close to
too.
him.
It's really exhausting. It's like I feel like I'm kind of bracing myself for that. I mean, Jack was this way for a long time. We've forgotten it already. Every
Well,
time.
but Jack
it
was like
yeah.
Jack was a weirdo, but he wasn't like offensive.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, he
Yeah.
just did weird. He did weird shit, like had like a really long beard and only drank like Mountain Dew for a week or something when he was meditating or something. But but he wasn't offensive in the and juvenile in the way in which Elon Musk is. I mean, did you see that like tweet he had yesterday about like an overweight Bill Gates?
No, I mean like taking the W out of Twitter and making
yeah,
it.
I know.
Like, whatever. Like
it's just
kind of
not
like,
funny. It's
Yeah.
just not. It's
no,
not funny.
yeah, no. Yeah, it's not. But it's what it's really not funny at scale.
Right. That's true. Right. Yeah. That's a great point. Like
No, it's actually like it would be like a funny kind of like tweet if it was like if you said at the bar with your friends. And it's not funny when you own the whole platform and the weight of like 300 people speaking is like on you. Yeah, it's like
right,
yeah.
Yeah.
Um and with that, I have to go see Macbeth, which seems like a metaphor for something. So
Yeah, really. Yeah. Anyway, I thank goodness that woman didn't show up, so I got to talk to you.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
I'm really sad that I didn't get to talk to Dell, but she'll be back on Monday. And until then, Scott,
We can't have fun anymore. Oh, but we get to have a social media platform run by one of the worst people on the planet.
Wow! Thanks, Scott. I'm gonna go have a drink. Bye.